Hello, everyone. Welcome to Book Passage, whether you are here in our Corte Madera store with us or online somewhere in the world. We're so happy you're here, and we're very excited about the fall books this year. We could talk for 4 or 5 hours and still not get there, but we'll try to condense it after the event. If anyone wants to ask me about anything that's on the list or not on the list that we don't bring up, please let me know. And if you're online and you want to ask me something, my email is elaine@bookpassage.com. People ask me why I give out my email, and my answer is I like to talk to my customers, so feel free. And if you forget my email, you can send it through the webmaster. He'll send it to me too. As I said, I'm Elaine Petruccelli. I have the honor of being the owner of Book Passage, and now they're calling me the founder, which tells you something about my hair. And Book Passage has been in business since 1976, and people have been supporting us through thick and thin, no matter whether it is horrible situations in the world, that never happens, recessions, pandemics, and I really am so grateful to all of you out there who have done this, because we're still here, and it's because you support us, and it makes me want to cry. One of the reasons we're still here is because we have the most fabulous staff of people. There are people here who have been here over 35 years. Now, not the people who are here today. Some of them have only been here 22 or 24 years, but they're the newbies. But we're constantly bringing in new, exciting booksellers, and you're going to meet one today. And that is because people are devoted to what Book Passage is about, which is books and community and bringing young people along to be lovers of books and having books for a wide variety of people. So I'm very lucky. The people who are with me today, I will call on them as they come, but I want to tell you about them now so I don't embarrass them when they're standing here. Louisa Smith is our head buyer. She grew up in the store when her parents brought her here often. She came to us early in her career and has been she's a 22-yearer, right? 26 now. Where did the time go? It's been 26 years. She has done just about everything in the store. She knows the whole wide variety. She works with other booksellers constantly, and with other buyers whom she is developing to be experts as well. So it's very exciting. She does have she has 2 children. A few years ago, she moved to Los Altos. I said, no, that's not going to stop anything. And we worked out that she would work at home. It's been many years, actually. And other booksellers said to me, that'll never work. You can't have people working at home. Guess what? We were pioneers, and Louisa was a pioneer. She is also, in her spare time, the editor-in-chief of Mysterious Press. So this is a very accomplished and incredible woman. And Karen West, how many years ago did we get together?
The 22-year-old.
She's the 22-year-old, only 22. And Karen West is our events director. And all over the world, people say to me, I can't believe all these great events that you produce. And that's because of Karen and the team she's developed, and her knowledge of what will work, her relationships with authors, and the fact that publishers know that if Karen says we're going to do the best job possible, that it's going to happen. And she is my confidant and my sister and many things, and I feel extremely lucky that she is here. And not too long ago, almost a year, Ari Ray Agnew joined us, and they are an absolute joy to work with. The buyer for children's books, you'll find Ari Ray on the sales floor in the children's section, charming children. She's like a snake charmer for children. And I have 6 grandchildren, and I go to Ari Ray to find out every single time I need a book because they always know just the right book. So we're very lucky with these people, but the other people who are here today, Allison and Deirdre and Meredith, are just a few of the great booksellers who work at Book Passage. So now that I've bragged, I'd like to talk to you a little bit first about history books and biography books. And the first one is a book no one's heard of. It's not on any lists. It's not being featured on the Today Show. It is called, it should be, Rosa Parks Beyond the Bus. And a customer called me, who I didn't know personally, and said, I helped edit this book, and I hope you'll carry it. And I thought, oh, God, it sounds like it could be awful, right? I haven't seen it. And then he sent it to me, and I could not believe how great this book is. Let me just tell you briefly what the story is, and then on November 7th at 5 o'clock, come and meet the author who will be in conversation with Noah Griffin. And Noah Griffin just wrote me last night, and he said, I thought I was knowledgeable about history, and particularly about race and history, and he said, I learned so much in this book. Rosa Parks lived in Detroit when she was, after all the things that happened with the bus, and when she was 81 years old, she was attacked in her house in Detroit. And H.H. Leonard's, who owns a hotel called the Mansion in Washington, D.C., where a lot of rock and roll stars stay, got a call from someone she knew a little bit from the NAACP saying, Rosa Parks has been attacked. Would you be willing to take her in? And we need to get her out of Detroit. So they brought her to Washington, D.C., and she lived in that hotel for the rest of her life. And some of the things that you will read in this book are amazing. I can only tell you the day that they were having a tea and Black women from all over the world came to the annual Rosa Parks tea at the hotel, and there were new neighbors across the street, and they called the cops. Said there are a bunch of Black people going in that house across the street. The cops came, and Rosa said, invite them in. They came in. She offered them tea. She charmed them, and they said, do not worry. We will always make sure you are safe. It's a really amazing story. So please come on the 7th and hear H.H. Leonard and Noah Griffin talk together. Now, I've talked too much, so I'm going to go a little quicker. Solito is a beautiful book about a kid who was 9 years old. His father had to escape El Salvador when he was a baby. He knew his father only from calls. That was it. Then his mother had to leave because she was threatened by the gangs. At 9, his grandfather found him a coyote that they trusted, and he crossed with this coyote. And this is his 9-year-old story. He is now an esteemed poet, a Stegner Fellow, and he grew up in San Rafael, California. But this book is getting huge national attention. And these two biographies, books should be looked at together. Nina Totenberg's Dinners with Ruth is not a book just about dinners with Ruth. That's certainly in there. Excuse me. This is about Nina's career as a woman covering the Supreme Court. She knows everything about everybody. There is so much great information in here about the court and women and the power of friendship, and of course, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who was her dear friend. They were friends long before Ruth was on the court. And another court coverer is Dahlia Lithwick, who wrote Lady Justice, which is just out now. And this talks about how after the 2016 election, women stepped forward and women became heroic in saying, we are not going to take this. Of course, there was the march. That was really important. But there were people like Sally Yates who talked back to Trump. She got fired for it, but that's okay. There's Becca Heller, who started a refugee program for people who had crossed. There's Roberta Kaplan, who sued the neo-Nazis who marched in Charlottesville. This is a really fascinating book. So these two together, you can give these to your daughter as you want to know what we do in the world when things go wrong, we step up. On October 29th at 1 p.m., Clint Hill and Lisa McCubbin will be here to talk about my travels with Mrs. Kennedy. Clint Hill was the Secret Service agent who you saw in the Zapruder films climbing onto the car when Jack Kennedy was shot. He was Jackie's agent, and he spent most of his time after that trying to figure out why wasn't I the one shot instead of the president. I don't know how he survived that. But then he met Lisa, who is a journalist and who lives in Marin County, and they have written books together, and they are fantastic. This is gorgeous, wonderful photos, great pictures, and it's both a biography and a history. So come October 29th at 1 p.m. If you'd like a signed book sent to somebody, let us know as soon as you can. And I think it's time for me to turn this over to someone who really knows the books, Louisa.
Thank you, Elaine. And if I can just take a brief moment to say that there would be no book passage without Elaine Petrocelli. She's amazing. She's the reason that I'm still here. And I could listen to her talk about books all day long. And all I do is talk about books all day long. So I learn something new from her every day. She is really a wonder. And we are so, so lucky to have her at our helm. So just that. I love that lady. Okay. So I have to admit, the way I like to learn history is to read a book, but not necessarily a history book, but like a narrative that makes me feel like I'm reading fiction, which I know true history lovers are appalled at. But that's how I like to ingest history. A really great, gripping story about something I didn't know anything about that I can get lost in. And one that really surprised me is this book called The Mosquito Bowl. You may know the author, Buzz Bissinger. He wrote Friday Night Lights. And in this book, he combines his love of sports, football, with this incredible story that we've never heard before about what happened in the Pacific Front during World War II, and the combination of sports and the military. Because a lot of the guys, you can imagine, that were in the military were also great athletes. They were also people that loved football, and the whole country did. Back then, college football was actually more popular than the NFL. So it was a big deal that these kids were being called up to war. And some of them actually worked getting out of war by joining West Point, playing for the football teams, and then flunking out right before they were going to be commissioned. And that's how they avoided it. So he tells the story about this intersection between these two worlds during this incredible time of turmoil. And the Mosquito Bowl itself is a football game that these two Marine troops decide to play against each other. They've been battling, they were exhausted, and they were going to do this sort of team building thing to play this game against each other. There were something like 69 ex-football players, professional football players, in the Marines at that time. They played this incredible game where they came together, and then they went and did the Battle of Okinawa, and a bunch of them died. It's incredibly moving. It's incredibly interesting. If you have anybody in your life that's interested in sports, perfect. Anybody interested in World War II, perfect. Or if you just want some sort of gripping tale that's true, it's a great story. Another thing that's of particular interest to me are books about Native American history. I'm Isla de Pueblo, so I think I know a lot about it, and then I read another book, and I realize I know so little because so many of us know so little. How much has been taught about indigenous history in this country? This was a country of empires, more than one, that existed at the same time before the Europeans came. And nobody is better at talking about that than this gentleman, who I'm not going to butcher his name by saying out loud, because I can't. But he wrote a beautiful book called Lakota America that came out a couple years ago, and this is the new one, Indigenous Continent. And it's about when the Europeans came, how there was this whole indigenous continent. By 1776, most of America was claimed to be owned by different European countries. However, it was really run by these indigenous communities, and how they fought them, how they fought each other, because they did not think of each other as friends necessarily, how there were incredible trade routes between them. I mean, just everything. This is a re-examination of American history, starting much earlier than most of us learned it, and it's fascinating. I love these books, and I hope that if you're interested in American history, even if you're just interested, it's starting in 1776, it's good to know the foundation of what was here before and who still exists here now. Many of us are still here, and I think we're often ignored, so it's an important book. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to my colleague, Karen West, who is so wonderful to work with and an incredible presenter.
Thank you. I love my job. I love our proprietor. I love my colleagues. They're like dear friends. And for a little girl that wanted, from the earliest age, I was living in a library. I was like Eloise, the children's books in the Plaza Hotel. This is me at my local branch, the Fig Garden Library in Fresno. And it has always been a dream of mine to be as close as possible to books. And then this job gave me that extra layer, which is I get to actually meet the writers themselves, the people that produce them. In a library, you only dream of such things. Those people sit up on the hollowed shelves of like, am I ever going to meet I didn't get to meet Nabokov or Dostoevsky and all of those people, but in these times, I have met most of the great writers of our time, which is a privilege, just a privilege. So I'm going to go rogue with my first book because it's not on your list, but I couldn't resist because I'm going to tell you that you have an extraordinary opportunity to meet Penn Jillette next Monday night at 6 o'clock here at Corte Madera store. And I do not think it should ever be missed. He is a giant among minds, a deep intellectual. I know you've probably heard of him from his famous magic act that goes on at Vegas. I can't stand Vegas, can't take the cigarette smoke, the whole lights and cacophony, but I make a pilgrimage to Vegas to see these two because everything about what they do is so intellectual, so clever, such a learning experience, and so darn entertaining. And now he's giving us this novel. If you want to know something about Penn is an agitator and a great atheist, and he runs the Skeptic Festival in Las Vegas, which is something that I'd like to make a pilgrimage to see sometime. So he's written this novel about a guy who's left by his scumbag dad with a monster mountain of debt in Vegas. And he doesn't, he basically should be praying because he has no hope of like solving this situation. But he doesn't pray. He takes up something called random philosophy, which is a principle that runs through mathematics and philosophy, that there is something in the random way that things happen that can cause good things to happen. So this is a mystery novel, but it's written cleverly, with lots of humor, with a rip-roaring story and twist. And if you get to come and see him on Monday evening, I promise you will not forget it, because every time he's coming to the store, I'm going, I don't care what my travel plans are or what I thought I was doing. I move everything to get to be in his company. He's that good. It's Monday night at 6 o'clock. Okay. So on Sunday, I have this great thing. I don't know if you guys, I imagine you're an NPR audience. Are you? Do you guys listen to NPR? Okay, one of my favorite things about being an NPR listener is that I'm often taking my shower, doing my makeup, and things happen. I learn stuff just randomly. I don't tune in at a particular time or for a particular show, but I got to listen to W. Kamau Bell this last Sunday on NPR. He was City Arts and Lectures rebroadcast, and he's written a book called The Anti-Racist Activity Book. And he made a really good point at the start of it, because in the Bay Area, we feel pretty pretty woke. We feel like we understand the issues at play. We feel like we want to know more and that we do know, and that we're not like those people in Tennessee or Georgia or Pennsylvania or someplace else. But the fact of the matter is we have huge gaps in our knowledge and our understanding. And the only way that we can overcome that is through digging in and doing the work. So he wrote that book, and then this book comes along that I have to say is just sheer. It's like you can have fun while you're learning. It's 140 Black pioneers are profiled in this. And this author is an artist, illustrator, designer. And so I'll just open it up because it's just portraits of people. Let's see if I can find some of the artwork that's here. You'll know a lot of the people in this book, but a lot of people you won't. It's like I knew like 29 of them. And the rest were pioneers in medicine, technology, business, the arts, photography, all sorts of worlds were opened up to me, just worlds. So I would say get W. Camus' book and get this one, put them on your kitchen table and avail yourself, like just crack it open to a random page and learn about somebody that you knew nothing about. And in these ways, your knowledge grows and the world changes. This is the way it's done. This is the way it's done. So I can't endorse this enough. Another NPR moment that happened for me on Sunday night when I got home and was brushing my teeth was they had an interview about this book with Linda Ronstadt. Linda Ronstadt, like Dolly Parton, is one of those great female icons, like one of those people in music doing the good work, living a right livelihood, and, by the way, being extremely talented as an artist. She is the granddaughter of Sonoran immigrants, and so she came up in abject poverty. I mean, basically had nothing and scrapped it up and scrapped it together. And she's written this gorgeous book that takes you into her Sonoran heritage. And so there's recipes, there's landscape, there's stories from her family. It's just a beautiful ode to Sonora and the lifestyle and the art and the culture, so that you can think of her as more than a maverick pop star, because she's so much more than that. She got the attention of Jerry Brown. I did read this about her too, that she's never been married. She has 2 adopted children, and Jerry Brown was the great love of her life. And that's a bit of our California history, isn't it? So this is a wonderful book. And I should go faster now. Aha. Reza Aslan. Now, I feel like I'm just going to be telling you how to fill up your calendar for October and November. We're doing this incredible collaboration with Calvary Presbyterian in the city. So we're going to host a lecture with Reza Aslan, who is a magnificent writer and scholar. He's written this book about a Christian martyr in Persia. His name was Howard Baskerville. He went there when he was 22 years old to teach. And when he got there, he was right on the crest of a major democratic revolution. So he's teaching these young men, primarily young men, English, and in turn, he grows so enamored with their idealism, he said, there's nowhere in the world where I could be of greater help than here in bringing about your democratic ideology. They were lifting up on some really terroristic times. And so he winds up fighting alongside of them and being martyred. Like, he devotes his life to helping them be liberated. He winds up dying, and now his where he passed away is a shrine that people, Persians from all over the world, go like to Mecca, because he really devoted his life, he was educated, and he really abandoned it all and wrote elegantly about what it was to join this group of people and fight their fight alongside of them. So he's a very, very important person in a piece of history you may not know much about. And Reza writes it so elegantly, just a superb intellectual writer, but it's vivid, it reads, it's so accessible. So, all right, back to Elaine now, right? Or back?
Elaine.
Okay.
Aren't they amazing? I mean, really, I feel a little bit, I don't know, when I see what they know and what I don't know, I'm just like, oh, wow. How did that happen? Now I'm trying to find my fiction. There it's hiding. Okay, I want to tell you about On the Rooftop. This is, already have autographed copies of this book. This incredible author, Margaret Wilkinson Sexton, is a real favorite of ours because when her Revisioners, I think it was, came out, we made it a first edition pick, and nobody had ever heard of her. And now she's a big deal, and she's like Jenna's pick or something like that. Do I have the right one? Everybody's talking about it. And I'm very proud to say that she will be one of the authors being celebrated on November 12th at the National Kidney Foundation Annual Authors Luncheon at the Palace Hotel. So I'll be there, and if you come, I'll see you. On the rooftop is set right in San Francisco in the Fillmore in the 60s. When I first came here in the 60s, the Fillmore was not the fancy shopping district with, $1,000 blouses that you can find there now. It was a mainly black neighborhood where you could walk down the street and you could see the black grandmothers sitting on the stoop watching the kids to make sure that the kid whose mother is a full-time nurse and has to work 12-hour shift goes home and stops at this woman who is not their real grandmother but feels that way, stops at her house for a snack first and gets started on her homework. That was the culture we had in the Fillmore when I got here. And this is about that time. And these people were renting these dilapidated but beautiful Victorians in the Fillmore district. Many of them are still there, but they've been really made quite up to date. A mother, she's a nurse. She works 3 days a week, 12 hours. She has 3 daughters. They are talented. She is determined they are going to be famous singers. Now, I'm a mother. Many of you are mothers. You know that being determined what your children are going to do is really a fool's thing. But what happens with them? They are the most interesting characters. The mother falls in love, and we get to watch the most incredible, out of this world love story. It is an absolutely gorgeous story, but I will not be spoiling the plot because it's in every review. The developers come and decide that the people there should be moved to new special housing for the poor, and that they will be changing these into private homes, which they are, of course, now. And some of my friends live in them. So I have mixed feelings, but I must tell you, this is a great novel. Another former first edition pick at Book Passage, I think maybe in the first year we had our first editions, shortly after we picked Khaled Hosseini for our first edition club, we picked, I think, The Path of Minor Planets. And this young man came out here in what was then new, where you could get a car and drive it for the day and take it back, because his publisher was not sending any escorts for him or giving him anything special. And he came and he signed all these hundreds of books. And if you have one, do not let anybody take it. It's very valuable now. His novel Less won the Pulitzer Prize a few years ago. And that was the last year we were able to have the Kidney Foundation in person before pandemic hit. And everyone said, oh my God, how can he follow that? You shouldn't write a sequel to Less, this incredibly great book about a man whose longtime love of his life is marrying a different man. And he is invited to the wedding, so instead he goes on a trip around the world. It's funny, it's profound. But now Les is older, and we are learning more about Les and about the San Francisco community and the gay culture in San Francisco at the time. And it is just as good, just as deep, and just as funny as Les. So don't want to miss it. And, okay, I know that I'm picking somebody you already probably know, Elizabeth Strout, who's one of the novelists I just can't wait every time she has a book. Lucy by the Sea may be her best ever. Now, a whole lot of people have written books about the pandemic. novels set in the pandemic, and I'm glad they have, because the pandemic is so confusing. Seeing it from different novelists' points of view is really, really wonderful, especially during the pandemic when we were all locked up. Lucy's ex-husband, William, when the pandemic hits, calls her up and says, "You've got to get out of New York City. I'm coming to pick you up." She says, "I don't want to leave New York. I love my apartment." He said, "Do you want to be locked up in this apartment?" "No, you're coming with me. I've found a place in Maine." And they go to Maine together. This is her first husband. Her second husband, whom she had a wonderful relationship with and who was a cellist in the Philharmonic, has died. And off they go. And in some ways, she remembers why they're not married anymore. But in other ways, they come to really appreciate each other. Spending the pandemic in Maine was very helpful for a lot of people, and I wish the book had been out then, because I could have been in Maine. But do not miss this book. It's terrific. And now I'm going to turn things back over to the mystery maven, Louisa Smith.
But before I talk about mysteries,
She's got 22 fiction books. I forgot.
I do have a lot of fiction books, but I'm not going to talk about them all. I can't resist pulling them as if I will talk about them all, but I promise you I won't actually talk about them all. I'm going to talk a minute, though, about our First Editions Club. I heard some people in the audience talking about it beforehand, some of our wonderful First Edition Club members, and you heard Elaine mention it. I just want to say a few words about what that is, in case you're interested. On top of which, we're so ridiculously proud of this club and the books and the authors and the support from our customers that it's just worthy of us talking about. It's a club where once a month we have a book that we select that is not necessarily a debut, often a debut, but an author that we think you haven't heard of yet, you may not know yet, but you will be hearing a lot from. We believe these are the authors that will be on all the awards lists that you will see coming. We had All the Light You Cannot See. We had The Kite Runner. I could go on and on about all the wonderful authors. Elaine had a few of them in her talk. And they're people there's something special when you read a new author and when you discover them, that they forever feel like you're a special author. You know, you just feel like you make that connection with their book, and forever after, whatever they write, it's so much fun to follow their career. We actually, this year, have two of our authors have books on the short list now for the National Book Awards, and we have a number of books there, and that would be The Town of Babylon by Alejandro Varela. So beautiful, incredible character study. I'm not going to take time to describe right now because it did come out in the spring. The Rabbit Hutch by Tess Gunty, which is a marvel, just in construction, and incredible. And I would love to talk to you about this one more too, but it came out in the summer, so I'm not going to talk about it. Those both are on the short list for the National Book Award. We have signed copies of both. And we have books that are out on the Booker shortlist. And a number of the other books on the shortlist for those awards used to be, their previous books were First Edition Club books. This month we have Which Side Are You On?, which is an incredible debut where it has a young man who is coming home from college to tell his parents that he's dropping out because he wants to fight the good fight. He's fighting on behalf of he's a young Korean gentleman. He's going to fight on behalf of a African-American man that was shot by a Korean policeman. And he feels that this is very important work to be done, and so he's dropping out of school. His parents were part of the Black Korean coalition in Los Angeles, and he wants to know about the kind of protesting they did back in the 1980s, and sort of trying to polish his bona fides with his new crew of people that he's hanging out with by talking to them and trying to hear what it was. And what he gets in the conversation with his parents is a much more nuanced conversation about communities and race and being allies and the hard work that has to be done. It's a very it's a very interesting book in that it's this beautiful character study, but it's also sort of a character study of our communities and the fractures that exist in them and how possibly we can heal them. It's a really impressive book. Hope to be seeing a lot more from him. Another book that I want to talk about that was just a complete surprise is a book called Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow. And this one, it's funny because I'm seeing it promoted a lot as a great book to give millennials, right? People in this book are my age, and I'm not a millennial, but it takes place at the dawn of the computer game age, right? 1995, when all these incredible computer games were getting built. And actually it begins before that as a friendship between a young girl who is getting some sort of good bat mitzvah hours by visiting a sick boy in the hospital, and they bond over playing these video games. And then they re-meet up when they're in college and decide to create a game of their own that is based on The Tempest, sort of. It is actually, though, even though all of that is interesting, I don't play video games, but I don't mind reading about incredible artwork and storylines, so that feels natural. But really what this book is about friendship. It's about how relationships wax and wane, the painful things that happen to friendships as we grow older, the tensions that can exist in there when you go out into the real world, and the kind of prejudices that make you maybe feel insecure, and how you try to overcome that with friends. It's a really beautiful, powerful story about people as they, trying to transition from being young adults to adults and the kind of pressures that puts on them. And it also, the video game stuff is really interesting. She designs one video game, which I forget exactly what it's called, but you have to shoot down the correct line in different Emily Dickinson poems to get it in the right order. So there are video games in the kind that maybe I would be able to win, but I love that book. And it's a great book. It is a great book to give to millennials because, and it is a great book to give to Gen Z. But it's a great book for us to read, too, because we all went through this. We've all gone through this. We've had relationships that have changed over time, and that's really what the book is about. Whalebone Theater. Not only is it fun to travel to different parts of the world through books, it's great to travel through time in books. I love historical fiction for that. And this is a really fun one. This is also a debut novelist, Joanna Quinn. This begins in 1928 with a young girl. Her parents have died, and she's being taken care of by her uncle and his new wife. And she discovers, in England, off the coast, she discovers a giant whale carcass. And over time, she and her half-brother and her cousins and various people help her put on shows of the Iliad and other things in the Whalebone Theater, in this great, big, hollowed-out carcass of this whale. And just sort of the imagination that's involved with that as they do that. But of course, that is, as she's growing older, I guess there's a theme to what I'm doing here, a difficult time in Europe. And the book evolves like as if I Capture the Castle, all of them suddenly became the new Cara Black mystery and set in World War II, where she is going behind enemy lines in World War II as a spy in the resistance. And it culminates with her entering into Paris before they get it back. It's really a wonderful sort of sweep you away story. A lot of fun. Great characters as well. Joanna Quinn, The Whalebone Theater. That's a really wonderful book. And then the last one I want to talk about, I feel like every one of these book talks, I have to at least have one book where there's an incredible dog character. Book people, if the Venn diagram of book people and dog people is pretty much a circle. So I think it's always good to have one. And I love Silas House. I don't know if you've read Silas House before. He usually writes about Appalachia and the beautiful area there. This is quite different. If you love Stations 11, this is sort of Stations 11 through his colored glasses. The world is on fire, and he is trying to escape it. The character is trying to escape it. I'm sorry, I'm forgetting his name, but there apparently is a place that you can go in Ireland, and he's making his way over there with his son. And on the way, he gets caught up with the resistance that's trying to fight this climate change in Ireland, because there's all these also very, I don't know how to put it. There's a lot of different governmental things now that are pushing down on what they're doing. So they're trying to find a place to live and live out without the government coming down on them. And it's beautiful. He is known for how vividly he writes. And you can imagine in a book about climate change and environmental disaster, but also takes place in Ireland, which is just known for being beautiful and lush. The contrasts between these different landscapes are wonderful. And his characters are incredible. The gun-toting widow that he hooks up with, this incredible dog, like I said, that is a very important character in the book, and then a young woman that he also gets. It's called Lark Ascending, and it's by Silas House. Did you want to talk about a mystery? Do you want me to go into mysteries and then? You go right on. I'm going to go right into mystery. As Elaine mentioned, I like a good mystery. I grew up in a house full of mysteries. They are candy. They are, to me, people have to pull them out of my hands, so I make sure to keep reading other things. Having said all that, there's something really wonderful about a book that can cross between genres and exist both in the literary world and the mystery world. I personally am of the feeling that every book's a mystery. There's always something you're trying to figure out when you're reading it. There's always some sort of ending you're trying to come to. It just happens that in the mystery section, often it's a dead body. But you know, a lot of great literature really are mysteries. And a lot of great mysteries are literature. This one is definitely on that boundary. We actually carry it in our regular fiction section. All That's Left Unsaid by Tracy Lean is an incredible book. It takes place actually in Cambria, Australia, where a young woman's going home. Her brother has been killed in an attack in Asia. She's Vietnamese, and he was attacked and beaten. And she's a journalist, and she goes back, and she's trying to figure out what happened. It's a really interesting book. If you loved Everything I Never Told You by Celeste Ng, which is a wonderful book, this is right up your alley. It's a community that's sort of closed itself off because it's an immigrant community in Australia. It's distrustful of the police. The police don't particularly care what's happened to this young man. So it's examination of their own prejudices and also trying to get to the bottom of what did happen to her brother. It's a wonderful book. Whether you like mysteries or not, it's a wonderful book to read. Another book that I loved is The Only Child by Kate Nunn. She is actually, it's so funny, you don't realize you're doing this until I'm up here talking. She is from Australia as well. But she's actually writing about the Pacific Northwest, where she lived for a number of years. It opens with, well, it doesn't open with, but it begins, the story really begins with 1948, I believe, where a young woman is pregnant and being sent to live at what is a Magdalen laundry on a little island off the coast of Washington State. And these really existed here. I think we all have read these stories now, ever since we saw Philomena or whatever. We think of it only happening in Ireland. But the truth is it happened here. And then you go to present day, where a middle-aged woman, she's sort of at the low point in her career, trying to reconnect with her teenage daughter, is coming back to this island. Her mother has now bought that building. It's called Fairmile Inn. She's turning it into a bed and breakfast. And one of the nuns who had worked at the Fairmile when it was a convent ends up dead. And they have to figure out what happened, what the connection is. It's a beautiful story, beautifully written mystery, I should say. It's very evocative. You can imagine the islands off of Seattle, a lot of storms and big trees, and I imagine it feels very damp and cold all the time. But it's also, I love that it ties in not only to something interesting about our past, but something that's still of importance to talk about today. And what happens when choices are taken away from us? What happens when we try to take them back? So it's a beautifully written one, The Only Child by Kate Nunn. And then I don't want to take up too much time because I know we're going long. I'm just going to say there's so many great mysteries. This one's a little bit of a horror story. I loved it, though, and it's a lot of fun. Jackal by Aaron Adams. And then we so love this whole series, The Bullet That Missed by Richard Osman. If you haven't started reading your Thursday Murder Club mystery, there's something, Elaine hates it when I say this, I love old people getting up to no good. That's like, any time that says anything like that on the back, she thinks it's insulting when I say it. But I think it's so much fun. There's nothing like people that have nothing to lose and it just, and a lifetime of experience, just finally giving in and having a good time. So I love this series. Richard Osman, the first one is the Thursday Murder Mystery Club. This is The Bullet That Missed, and it's the third in the series. Elaine?
Okay, I have to stand up for myself here a little bit. First of all, I really didn't want to read these books because cute little old ladies and cute little old men, I just knew that I was going to hate them. But my best friend, Nancy Oliveira, told me I was wrong, and she's a very good, careful reader, as is Louisa Smith, as you can tell. And I thought, well, okay, I'm going to read them. I am absolutely hooked. I can't wait for the next one. It's just, it's so much fun to read. So, get away from what's going on in the world and have fun with these. So, a couple of things. Visual Thinking by Temple Grandin. As you know, Temple Grandin is someone who sees things differently than a lot of us do. And she uses that ability to really make a big difference in how the rest of us see the world. And I just have so much awe of this woman. And every time she's had an event with us, I've been thinking, I just want to be with her for, a month or two to have her show me what I'm seeing that could be seen in a totally different way. On October 26th at 7 o'clock, she's going to be at Dominican University's Angelical Hall as part of our joint lecture series through the Institute for Leadership Studies and Book Passage. Come, you're going to really want to see it. She just demystifies science. She's on the cutting edge of thinking, and because of the way her mind works, she's able to see things before the scientists even remember or figure out that maybe they'd want to investigate that. And then they do, and they find out, hey, wait, how'd we miss this? She's just brought a coalition of great thinkers together, and she's also really fun to hear. So come on over. And then, How to Speak Whale. Now, I can't speak Italian, and I've been studying it for 20 years. So I thought, how in the world am I going to care about Tom Mustel's book, How to Speak Whale? This is an adventure, a scientific adventure, a literary adventure. Tom and his friend were in a kayak off the Monterey Bay coast. They were really, really cold. And a whale came along and jumped on their kayak. And they were sure they were going to die. I mean, crushed by a whale. What a weird way. How do they explain that at the memorial service? At any rate, this whale was gentle, warmed them, and left. And they were, you can imagine. But what was also happening is all kinds of whale watchers were on the coastline taking pictures and watching this whole thing happen, which is a good thing because maybe people wouldn't have believed it. I don't know. But using photography and artificial intelligence, they were actually able to identify the whale and to follow this whale and to get to know this whale and to see how whales communicate. And so this is really about what we're missing, because we don't speak dog, even though we think we do, or whale. And I want to start speaking whale any minute. And he talks about what they did learn, that I'm scared to death of artificial intelligence. I know that I wouldn't be able to use my computer or invite you to this event today without artificial intelligence. But to me, it's just, what could happen is frightening. Here, what happens is something so good. So enjoy, share this with anyone you know who's interested in science or nature or a really good adventure story. And now I'm going to turn it back to Miss West, who has the most incredible gift books. Did I forget some? Just doing nature first. Oh, nature first.
Is it okay if I jump around a little here? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So the other thing, I could have grown up in a library, but I also wanted to grow up in a museum because art and books to me are the hallowed two. So this, I know that these are called gift books, or back in the old days they used to call them coffee table books or whatever. But I heartily believe in a book that sits on the kitchen table, the dining table, on your couch, that you just dig into, or that when friends are over or family are over, you just crack it open and all of a sudden wonders are revealed. And this is one of those books. This is 3,000 years of history of people articulating the oceans and seas of the world in art. And it's just a cornucopia. It's a mind-blowing book. I cannot even believe the price tag on this. It should be $500 because the art is so rendered so gorgeously, and it's really an exploration of all sorts of sculpture, painting, printing, all sorts of forms of art media to explore the oceans and seas, and it's wondrous. This book is so wonderful, and I just want you to come up after the talk and graze it. Just graze it and see if you don't fall deeply in love with it. It's just extraordinary. I don't know, are you guys Mary Oliver fans for her poetry? I'm touched deeply by her work, and she has a line that says, "Every day there is something that kills me with delight." That's what Mary Oliver said. And I think that she wrote a lot about nature and about birds, and I carry that line with me every day that I walk this earth because it reminds me. Now, COVID was really hard on a lot of people. I lost my mother. She was in a nursing home for 7 months, and I never got to go in and see her before she died because that's what happened. But one of the things that came out, the silver lining of a pandemic such as this, is that the birds got a life that they have not had for decades and decades, hundreds of years actually, because flights were grounded, people stopped driving, things happened all over the world with birds. And all of a sudden, I don't know if you noted it in your own backyard. My desk is right overlooking a corner of our garden, and the bird song changed dramatically for me for the last couple of years. And so birds habitate all of the habitats of the world. They are everywhere we are. And when they are healthy, we are healthy as a culture and as a people. So this is an ornithologist, a Nat Geo photographer, and this is just an exquisite examination of birds all over the world. And so it goes to all different continents and takes you in to see the birds, and then teaches you about their wonder and where they are and their habitats. And he's superb because he's the scientist artist that's rendering it for you. So I believe in having a lot of birds in your life and exploring them and wanting to maintain their habitats and their lifestyles so that they can be with us for a very, very long time to come. Gorgeous book. And then I'll do one other quick bird book, Homage to the Bird by Greg Oakley. This is, I think all of you probably grew up, I certainly did, with the Audubon books and learning the Audubon books in drawings of birds. Okay, so this is his homage to that sort of art. And so what he's done is he's photographed birds, and these are like hundreds and hundreds of photographs of the same bird to render them so that they look like pieces of art as if they were drawn or painted. And it's just another, I think these two go as companions. You put them on that big coffee table or that dining table and just dig into both of them because they echo each other in just gorgeous ways. And you can't go wrong with giving somebody this as a gift for the holidays. So 2 big, bountiful bird books. All right? I think, yes. I went out of order, didn't I?
No, you were perfect. No, you did perfectly. She's always perfect. And it gives me an opportunity, actually, to put on my head buyer hat and let you know print runs. I don't know if you've heard us talk about print runs, supply chain. Maybe that's a word that you've heard. It's better than it was. It's not as good as it was before the pandemic, however. It's still a real issue. It's particularly an issue for any book that has images in it, like the bird books that you just saw, cookbooks, children's picture books. Think about those. We are not guaranteed to be able to get books back in stock once we hit November. We may be able to. They hope we will be able to, but we've gotten emails saying that they can't guarantee that. If there's a book you know that you want to give somebody as a gift this holiday season and you know it early, you should buy it early, because once we are out of them, we may be out of them until 2023, unfortunately. And we try to do our buying in a way that this will not impact you. But every year, there's that one book that we are dying that we don't have more of that you guys want. And if you know what you want already, just put that in your hat. Just think about it. November is really the date that we're worried about, starting then. I just want to mention very quickly, we have 3, it's unusual. We often have one big sports book a season, which is great because everybody has to buy a book for a 14-year-old or a 40-year-old that doesn't read but loves sports. But what often happens, it's one sport, and if it's not the sport they love, well, there's not much you can do. You can give it to them. They may not be that excited about it. This is the first year that I can remember in recent history where we have 3 incredible, beautiful, big sports book in 3 different sports. So I just want to mention them. You can come up and look at them later, but we don't have to have a long conversation. 28, this is the photographic tribute to Buster Posey. It's amazing. We have signed copies. I'm a huge Buster Posey fan. I have his jersey. I saw him when he was in the minor leagues, so he's my personal baseball player. None of you get to claim him, I'm sorry. But you can claim this book, and it's really a wonderful tribute. Gods of Soccer. I can't even remember the last time I had a really great soccer book, but God knows how many kids out there are playing soccer, and more people are becoming fans of the sport. This is wonderful. Even though it says men in blazers, those are the people that made the book. They're fabulous, but it's not only men that are in the book. It also has female soccer stars, and it's beautiful. And this one's plastic wrapped right now, but open it up, gorgeous photos inside. And then this one's really fun and gorgeous and the heaviest. Field of Play, 60 years of NFL photography. What's important for you guys here in the room to know, maybe more than the people watching online, is that he was the photographer for the 49ers. So a lot of the photos are 49ers. It does cover all the teams, but for us in particular, this will be a very good book. And then from there, I believe, are we going to cookbooks? Is that right?
Okay. You have one.
I have one cookbook. Do you want me to just do
wanna
mine?
do yours? Yeah.
Why don't I just do mine really fast while I'm up here? So there's 2 kinds of cookbooks, I feel like. There's the aspirational ones. They're just gorgeous that I fall for every year, and I buy, and I love, and I drool over, and I make very little out of because I'm also a little bit lazy and very busy and limited in my skill set. And then there are the books that I actually cook from. And so I really wanted to talk about Simple Pasta. She wrote Williams, so what's her name? Odette Williams, wrote a book called Simple Cakes, which was wonderful because I have 2 girls who like to bake. So I didn't even have to do anything. I just handed them the book, and it was perfect. This one, she was going to go to Italy to learn how to make pasta, and then 2020 happened, and she was grounded in San Francisco. So she taught herself how to make pasta, and she firmly believes that all of you can make pasta. And she even has gluten-free pasta in here, all kinds of pasta, which is wonderful. That sort of satisfies my aspirational side of maybe I'll make pasta. But really, how I fell in love with this book is I offered to throw my mother her birthday party for my aunts and uncles coming in from out of town and everybody. And I hadn't really thought it through ahead of time what I was going to make, especially given that almost all my best recipes are my mother's, and there was no way I was going to serve those at a party for her where she would know everything I'd done wrong. So I was madly trying to figure out what I was going to make, and everything had to go together. And I live over an hour away from my mother, so I was going to have to transport the whole meal for 15 people. And then I took a look at this book. And the wonderful thing about it is she then, after she teaches you how to make all this pasta, she breaks it up into seasons, and she has it broken down into, like, if you're going to do a whole meal. So for fall, these are the appetizers you can do, which all go with this salad, these salads, which all go with these pasta dishes. And if you're not going to make the pastas, these are the dried pastas you're going to make with it. It was perfect. I had the whole thing from appetizers through the whole meal, through desserts in one book. They were easy to make. Don't tell my mother that. They were easy to make. They were delicious. Even my daughters ate them, and they were there was fish in them, which normally they would have in pasta. There's no way. But they loved them. It's a really wonderful book for if you really are going to cook. And that's it. Go ahead.
Like real cookbooks like that. She's so right. I have hundreds of cookbooks that I never crack. They're just food porn on my shelves. Okay. So this is what I love about this book too, is that I love Mexican food. I love it, and I always go out for it, right? I mean, it's the type of cuisine that you think, I should get to a Mexican restaurant. I shouldn't attempt these things on my own. The spices, the dishes, it just seems like something I always go out. So I was delighted to find this book and say that I think we all need to adopt a more plant-based diet, no matter where you sit on that spectrum. It's good to get more vegetables into your diet and work in this world. But this one has just amazing, simple recipes that I felt I could conquer immediately. In fact, I'm going home tonight to make the mushroom popover thing that they have in here with a salad, because it's so simple and it's spicy. It's got a tomatillo sauce and it's easy to do. And I cracked it open and I felt I can approach this and have Mexican food at home. So definitely a tip on that. Homage, I'm going to blaze through these because Amish, soul food, get out. I was like, what is that? I was just like, Well, what it is this guy does the history of his family. They're slave generation, moved to Western Pennsylvania. Guess what's in Western Pennsylvania? Huge Amish community. So it's this totally black family living in Amish country. And so it's a collision between the cultures, and the food is beautiful. And you wouldn't believe how much there is a resonance between Southern German and Dutch cuisine with African American soul food. So it's really quite something to dig into. And there's beautiful photos. And again, something that you can cook out of and also get a history lesson while you're doing so. It's really it's something that you'll give somebody who has 100 cookbooks and they'll go, I never thought something like this existed. So it's somebody who can delight with something unusual. I'm going to run past the cookbooks and do the last two that I have. This is The Beauty of Ukraine. And this is a gorgeous photo essay book. So glad they produced it, because I'm so afraid so much of what you're going to see in here is definitely in peril and may not exist. Fields, industrial areas, neighborhoods, homes, shops, everything in this book. So this, I would say, is a book of our time, right? The photographer in this is now serving on the front lines in Ukraine, over there right now. So this would be buying a piece of current history and having it on your bookshelves to remember something by. Very important and critical. And then I don't know about you, this is the big beast of a book. It's Annie Leibowitz's portraits between 2005 and 2016. My mother, one of the greatest gifts she gave to me was made me a lifelong enthusiast for Vanity Fair. And my son, who's 35, as well, because she always had a stack of Vanity Fairs on her bed. And Annie Leibowitz, the eye of this woman, the way she gets into people with portraits, this is the big, lush book of the season where you can open it up and see politicians, actors, writers, everybody, and look into their soul, because that's what she does. She captures people. I don't, I mean, the beauty. But more than that, there's something much more that Annie Leibovitz does. She really does get into the soul of her subject. So this is a gift that nobody will regret that you got them. And it's beautifully curated and beautifully made. So it makes that kind of fabulous gift. So, and this is one that you better get it right away because they aren't going to be able to, this is going to have a supply problem because it's something else. All right.
As I said, I could listen to both of these amazing women for hours. And now we're going to come to what really is my favorite section. I went into the book business because we lived near a bookstore where the man hated children, and they would come down with their allowance wanting to buy the very next book, and he would have them up on the high shelves, and he wouldn't let them touch them unless they promised to buy them. And I thought, I don't think I like this. We could do better than this. And so I have such a passion for the idea that children should be able to come into a bookstore, relax, for their parents not to feel they have to spend money. If they can't, just come and share the books with your children here. If they can, please do. We have a program that I know a lot of you have contributed to that really means a lot to me, which is our Giving Tree program, where our customers come in, if they're in the area, they take a name of a child off a tree and their age, and we help them pick a book for that child, and they buy it for them. People also from far away contribute money or listen to this talk after you hear Ari Ray and say, I'd like to buy a child that book. We give away thousands of books every Christmas, and we also have a program throughout the year. So I hope you'll share that with us because it's really important. Another thing we do, I just want to say in children's books, is that we have junior high school kids who've been coming here for years. Now they're sort of starting high school, and they decided to write a book together after our children's expert brought them an author who was also a screenwriter, and he explained to them the screenwriting thing of Save the Cat. I didn't know that, but now when I go to the movies, I go, Save the Cat. In the first reel, the cat gets in trouble. You'll lose the cat. The cat's up in the tree. The middle part, what are we going to do to get the cat back? Everybody has to get together and figure it out. And in the end, we get the cat back. It will ruin your way of seeing television after that. But these kids said, that's easy. We can do it. Well, of course it's not easy. But with mentoring with our children's staff, they wrote a book, and it was such a big success because it sold at least 300 copies that we are now on our fourth book. And in November, I'm not sure when it is, but it's coming soon, we'll be having an event for their fourth in their Dragon series. And grandparents and parents come from all over, and I stand in the corner and cry because it's the absolute opposite of what my children ran into down the road. And so I am so happy that Ari Ray is here, because if you see her talking to a child or grandmother or someone who wants a new book for a new baby, you have come to the right place. So thank you, Ari Ray, for being here.
Thank you so much for that very wonderful introduction. Oh, and I'll bump into a bunch of books on my way over. And I also wanted to say that regarding our wonderful Giving Tree program, something really, really lovely that I've seen people do in my short time admittedly working here is bring their family members or kids they know in to pick books. And if you have a child in your life that you'd like to give that incredible gift to, of being able to give someone they know really needs a book, one of their favorite books, it's so much fun. It's so exciting to see them pick out the books they love to share them. Speaking of sharing books we love, I'll get to it. Farmhouse. This one is a beautiful children's picture book. And if you've ever had that moment of driving by an abandoned farmhouse and seeing its beauty and thinking about what could have happened there, what lives could have unfolded, This is absolutely a book you will appreciate, and please share it with people in your life who you know will appreciate it too, because oh my God, it has gorgeous collage-esque artwork. It's absolutely incredible. Sophie Blackall, who did this, is a really talented children's picture book creator, a wonderful illustrator. Get this one, give it as a gift, keep it for yourself, and appreciate this lovely artwork. It's wonderful. And another one with just the most phenomenal artwork. This story is not about a kitten, is not a story about a kitten. It's a story about a community. It's a story about coming together. It is kind of like that rhyming, this is the house that Jack built kind of unfolding. This is not a story about a kitten. This is not a story about the dog who found the kitten. And it has really vibrant colors. It's lovely. Get this one. These are both ones that, as has been mentioned, with the supply chain, getting the picture books back in isn't always the easiest. So get them as soon as possible when you see the one that you think is beautiful and you want to get someone. Smaller, but packs a punch. This little block of a book unfolds intricately into a masterpiece of space. And it's a great way to share the wonders of space with the young people in your life. But if you want to share other things, these block books come in all sorts. All the same shape and size, I will say. But there's sharks, there's love, there's counting, there's Sesame Street. These are lots of fun. Another wonderful little board book, Our Little Kitchen, is also a story about a community, this one coming together to create a meal to share with all of their neighbors. Really sweet, cute artwork. I love every character in this book. I don't think it ever even says their names. And yet, after I read this book, I felt like I was close personal friends with just each person who walks through this story. And all right, let's get to the older books, because I know that we don't all have people who want picture books, and that if we give them these little things, they'll think, oh my God, how old do you think I am? Alan Gratz writes really phenomenal historic fiction for young readers. His new book, however, 2 Degrees, reminds us that we are still in this moment living through history. This one touches on global warming and climate change. All of his books follow multiple different viewpoints, sometimes even through different time periods. This one has one of its protagonists living here in this area during the California wildfires. And it's a really wonderful way to remind people, especially young readers, that they are seeing something unfold and it's a part of history that they can jump into and interact with. They are living through change. They get to be a part of it. History is not just something old and dead. It's something they should look at and participate in every single day. Otter is also a very local book in a very different direction. This is a really sweet novel in verse by Catherine Applegate, who's very near and dear to us, about an otter in the Monterey Bay Aquarium's fostering program. It's so, so sweet. Look at this otter. And it has illustrations throughout too, if I can just happen to flip open to one. It's so cute. Who doesn't love otters? I love otters so much.
Could you just mention the age ranges?
Yes, oh my goodness, thank you. This one is escaping me. Thank you so much. This one is great, I'd say, for around 8 to 12, but you can go a bit younger because its beautiful verse makes it a lot more accessible to younger readers. So for very precocious 7-year-olds and even 6-year-olds, this is great. Alan Gratz is a little bit older than 8, more like 9 to 10, going up into the teen years, 13, I'd say. These ones are picture books. You know, I'm sure you can more or less assess, but these ones, of course, very, very young. They're the cardboard pages. They're stocky. 1 to 2, I'd say, maybe 3. They won't get cut. It's great. And these 2 can go up all the way to, I'd say, about 6 or 7 if you think they'll appreciate the artwork. But especially if they're still reading with their parents, you know, this is one for much more so the younger reader. All right, let's get up to our nonfiction for kids. This one is, I love books like this that a very young child can open up and enjoy the artwork and talk about with their parents, someone as young as like 6, maybe even 5, but that a much older reader, someone going up into even the age of 13, can get just so much information out of by reading all the fine little details. This is a beautiful, beautiful book. Full of Life is its title, about biodiversity on our planet. It's gorgeous. It is incredible. It's lovely. It's another one we will have difficulties getting back in. The Search for Sasquatch. We all know he's out there. What's going on? What's the situation? Laura Krantz, who did this book, has a really wonderful podcast. And something I found out after I read this book is that lots of families listen to her podcast together. So when you share this book with someone, you also share those stories too. It's a wonderful introduction. She's working on another one right now. I think it's about aliens. So to those intrepid young explorers in your life, this is a great book. Ask me about the nests after this, because I don't know what was in those nests. Something's going on. Something's happening out there with Bigfoot. Young adult, for the teens in your life. And for you, if you like a very riotous read. Lightlark, we have some really wonderful collector's editions of this book. We have beautiful signed copies. Every 100 years, there is a centennial, and the rulers of these different realms come together to compete. They all have fascinating magical powers that have been given to them that each comes with equally fascinating curses. It is twisty, it is turny, it is fast-paced. It is very difficult to set down, but I've managed to set it down to come talk about it. Belladonna is... I feel like the word campy can get loaded sometimes. Sometimes campy means something is less good. Sometimes it means it's pulpy and fun. But this book, oh my gosh, this book is camp, Halloween camp that I have not felt in a story for a long time. It felt like watching a wonderful Tim Burton movie. It is, on the surface, a romance with death, but on the undercurrent, there is a wonderful Regency mystery unfolding that is really, really fun to watch. The Getaway is a interesting thriller. I don't want to say much more because I don't want to give it away. And the last book I have that I'm going to talk about, I did a bad thing. I fell in love with this book, and I've just routinely been selling out of it because I keep telling people, you need to get this book. It's so good. So we keep cycling through having lots of it, having a little of it. This book, it is small, but it packs a punch. It's one of those things that I just picked up, pure chance. You know, you're like, oh, that looks interesting, I'll read it. I got sucked into this book. I could not put it down. It's so phenomenal. It looks like it's just a little simple graphic novel, but this choose your own adventure story has really fascinating philosophical implications that everyone will enjoy. This is a story about what it means to contribute to your society, what it means to tell the truth, and what it means to make a choice. And much more than that, what it means to follow the rules you've been given. It's fascinating. And like Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow, which I believe you mentioned, also a great book for anyone with an interest in video games, because this, in some places, reads almost like playing a role-playing game. It's phenomenal. I love this book. As long as we can keep getting it in, I'm going to keep getting it in and hopefully selling out of it. So check it out. Thank you so, so much. If you have any questions about any of these, I'm always so, so happy to talk about them. I'm always here in the kids section, or almost always. It's very hard to keep me away from it. Thank you so much.
Well, now you can see why I love my job and how lucky I am to have so many supportive, fabulous, brilliant people. So thank you for being part of this wherever you are in the world. We hope you're going to spend this evening reading, and let us know what you need, what you like. Wherever you are, we send books all over the world. So when you get your holiday shopping thoughts together, just know we'll take care of everything. You can just stay home, give us a call, send us an email, or come on in. And we just wanted, I'm so lucky that I have Louisa and Ari Ray and Karen and 35 other brilliant people in both Corte Madera and in the Ferry Building and online that every morning I get up and I can't wait to talk to everybody. So thank you all so much. Please stay for some more coffee and tea. If you're online, get yourself a cup of coffee. You're ready to look at books. Thank you so much.